feeling like a winner, feeling like a badass is the best way to succeed in life. And when my dad told his family that he wanted to marry my mother, they didn't accept it. If anyone tells you that you can make $10 million in the next year with something, it's a scam. You should run the other way. If I ever tell you that, you'll know that I've been kidnapped and you need to probably come and rescue me. I think it's weak to not be able to cry as a man. On stage in Delhi in front of 1,000 people 2 nights ago, I cried.
If there's one thing you will take from this podcast, it has to be discipline. Hi everyone, I'm Ishan Sharma, and with me today I have the electrifying Sahil Bloom. I have been reading his content on Twitter and LinkedIn for years at this point, and I'm in awe of his personality. Sahil, thank you so much for taking out the time. How are you doing there?
I'm in awe of your personality. So I'm excited to be here. I'm so inspired by young people that have the energy that you do and that have already accomplished so much in your life. So I'm going to pick up just as much from you as hopefully I'm able to give to all of the people that are listening.
Epic. Let's get started. How are you finding India? What are you learning from this country?
Oh, just having so much fun on the trip. As I said, I think the youth population in India has more energy for growth than any other place in the world. And so when I come here, I feel this new energy. When I leave, I'm so fired up to go and build things because I see all of these young people that are excited to grow, excited to learn, excited to, experiment with new things.
Mm-hmm. You've met a lot of 20-year-olds in India so in the last few days, right? What is something that is an unknown to Indian youngsters that you now know?
Unknown. Say again. What do you mean?
What is something that they don't know that they don't know?
Oh, they don't know that they don't know. I would say just that they are capable of so much more than they understand or appreciate. One of the most common questions I keep getting when I'm here from young people is this feeling of self-doubt. They're like, well, I don't know, I'm not sure I can accomplish that. I'm not sure that I can do these things that you've done. I don't know what my path looks like. There's all these questions. And they assume that I have it figured out or that the entrepreneurs they admire have it figured out. And what they haven't realized yet is that no one has their whole life figured out. Everyone's just in this process of figuring it out over time. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is the most empowering realization to have in life, is just to understand that you are never going to figure it out when it comes to your life. You're going to be constantly trying to ask better questions. And if you have the ability to ask better questions and you have a bias for action, so you actually start moving and doing things, you'll always find a way to thrive.
Really cool. You've been writing for how many years?
Just 3.5.
3.5 years.
Yeah.
I think that the consistency that you have is respectable. And I want to understand this. How do you stay disciplined and how do you stay consistent? And for people who are watching who's a 20-year-old, they're finding it hard to stay consistent. They're distracted. What can they do to get to that zone of flow?
Discipline is fundamentally an act of service. And it is an act of service to your future self. That's the way that I've always thought about discipline. When you are doing it, you are doing the ultimate act of service for your future self. You're doing something that your future self is going to benefit from the compounding of. And the biggest challenge with that is you need to bring the after into the before. And what I mean by that is before you do something hard, you don't want to do it. You're sitting in bed and your alarm goes off and you say oh, no, I can sleep. I can do a little bit more, a little more rest. Or no, I don't need to do this workout. Or no, I don't need to do this work. Whatever the thing is, you don't want to do it because it's hard. But after, when you do it, you feel amazing. And what you need to do is you need to find a way to bring that feeling of the after into your decision that comes before. So when you're waking up in the morning and you're feeling like you don't want to get up, remind yourself how good it feels when you woke up on time and when you went and did the hard thing. Or if, for me, doing my cold plunge, remind yourself how it feels after the cold plunge before. Bring that after into the before, and then you'll be able to build the momentum and build that discipline muscle over long periods of time.
Discipline is the greatest form of self-love.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Absolutely. Because no one cares more about your actions of today than your 80-year-old self. I've always said that the 2 things you need to keep in mind as you're getting older are to make decisions that both your 80-year-old self and your 10-year-old self would approve of. Because your 80-year-old self cares about the long-term compounding of the things you're doing today, and your 10-year-old self is the one that reminds you to have some fun along the way.
That's beautiful. Tell me about the cold plunges, the cold showers and the ice baths that you've been taking. Why torture your body like that early on in the morning?
Yeah.
When it's freezing cold, at least in US.
Yeah.
And what does it do to your mind?
So I have been doing a daily cold plunge. I think probably for the last 500 plus days. I've done one every single day, including while I'm here in India, by the way. I've had the hotel delivering me like 20 kgs
Buckets
of
of
ice to my room that I can pour into the bathtub. For me, there's a few things. The first one is I believe in the power of doing hard things because life is hard. And when you take on voluntary struggle, you train yourself to be prepared for the involuntary struggle that will inevitably come into your life. The chaos, the uncertainty, the pain, the struggle, all of those things that are going to strike you, you become more well equipped because you've built that muscle. And so doing something hard to start every single day is one way to train that. And I feel it in myself. My stress response, my ability to manage stressful situations is 10x what it used to be a few years ago because of doing this, building that muscle over and over and over again. Outside of just that, I feel enormous health benefits from it. It's been shown through science to improve things like your immune system, to improve your metabolism, to improve your energy, to improve your focus. There's this sustained dopamine release that lasts for 2 hours after the fact. It's like the same as like taking cocaine, but it actually lasts for a long period of time. And I really do feel that every single time I do it. When I get out, I have this unbelievable surge of energy and this good feeling. And at the end of the day, you all know this, feeling like a winner, feeling like a badass is the best way to succeed in life. Because when you feel like a badass, you do things that a badass does. You win. Like you go out and you execute on the things you said you were going to do. And I don't know a better way to start your day feeling like a badass than getting into freezing cold water and feeling the pain of that and thriving through it.
I can relate with the resilience part of it because in my 11th and 12th grade, I prepared for the IIT JEE exam, which you might have heard of. And it trained me not to solve the physics questions, but to actually get into this zone of not quitting, being with the problem and staying put while you're at it. So I think that's the biggest learning I've had through that experience. And I would love to try ice bath someday.
Yeah, you should. I'm obviously biased, but I think it's an incredible practice. And you can start with a cold shower. You can start with like 30 seconds in the cold shower. Anything is better than zero.
You've been writing for so long. What helps you write clearly? Like, I think that all the threads that you've written, especially the ones in which you talk about the lessons you've learned as you're turning 32, 33, what helps you to write clearly and what can people do to write effectively?
I really try to write to my younger self. So whenever I'm writing something new, I'm thinking like I'm writing a letter to my younger version of myself. And what would be the insights and what would be the language that would be simple enough that my younger self would understand it and actually internalize it and then act upon it? Because if I speak in high sounding, complex words to try to impress all my smart friends, it's not going to connect with the person I want it to connect with, which is someone younger who's early on their journey, who's struggling with certain things. I want to connect with that person because if I can be a tiny little ripple that creates this inflection point in their life, that is my mission in this world. And so I need to make sure that my writing is actually doing that. So the actual way that I do that is that I try to either read things or explain things to a quote unquote 5-year-old. Like go talk to someone who doesn't understand the topic and see how well you're able to explain it to them. Like if I go and talk to, say my wife doesn't know much about some business concept and I'm going to write about that in a piece, I need to be able to explain it to her such that she understands it. And that means it has to be simple language. I'm not using all these fancy words and jargon and acronyms. I'm breaking it down and distilling it to its essence. It's called the Feynman technique. It's like this idea from Richard Feynman that complexity and jargon is just used to mask a lack of deep understanding. And real deep understanding means that you are able to simplify it. You're able to explain it to a 5-year-old.
Neville talks about it. It's easy to
Yeah.
macro bullshit than to micro bullshit.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's 100% true. How many times have you talked to someone that tries to like impress you with all of their vocabulary and their jargon and their words?
The abbreviations.
Yeah, and then when you scratch the surface, there's nothing under it. The emperor has no clothes. You go to actually try to ask them a deeper question, and they don't understand shit. It's just that they're trying to impress you with their big words. The really smart people, the incredible people that achieve, billion-dollar outcomes, they have an ability to break things down to make you feel smart. They say it in such a simple, beautiful way that you actually feel empowered. You feel uplifted. They're not trying to make you feel dumb. They actually want to educate you so that you feel smart.
I think the art of writing less but expressing more is rare. I get so many emails, and I think you will understand this as well. People write these long paragraphs that, hey, Ishan, this is who I am, this is where I am, and this is what I want for you. We don't have time to read all of that. And I think that's the problem that most people are struggling with. They write too much, and people don't reply because it's just lazy writing.
Mm-hmm.
So what can they do to write less and express more?
Tactically, space everything out. This is just like an optical thing that humans do. But when you see a block of text, like if you send me an email and it's just a paragraph block of text, I can almost guarantee I'm deleting it. I'm not reading it because it's just intimidating. I see it. If it's a cold email already, I'm unlikely to read it. And then when I see a block of text, I'm just like, oh, optically, I can't. It looks like too much. If you just space that out, like you do hard enters and double space down, all of a sudden it becomes inviting. I see it and I'm like, okay, I can digest one line at a time. If you go and look at any of my writing, I apply that principle to everything that I do. It should feel like you read one sentence, basically, like one line, you get the point, and now you're getting moved to the next thing. It feels inviting, like it's moving people through. So when you're sending cold emails, when you're writing your posts on LinkedIn or on Twitter or anywhere else, space things out to make them optically appealing just as much as the words are actually appealing.
I think another thing that I've learned from you is how clearly you communicate. And as a 19-year-old, I used to struggle with this a lot. I used to stammer. I just did not know what to speak. I used to think too much. And through the repetition of 1,000 videos, I have gotten to where I am today. But what can people do to communicate more effectively and with confidence? I've made a video on this, but I would love to have your take on it.
Yeah, I think character invention, if you've ever heard the concept, is a really helpful tool for instilling confidence when you're young with communication. So the idea comes from all of these celebrities and famous people who have basically created a character that they get into that mode of when they're going out to do a performance. We all feel this feeling of imposter syndrome and nerves before a big performance. Kobe Bryant felt it. Beyonce feels it before she goes on stage. These people feel nervous the same way you and I do, even though they're the 0.01% most elite in their field. And what they did was they created a character that they found a way to switch on in those moments so that they could almost remove themselves from their own body and be the person and show up in the way that they felt they needed to. I have always found that helpful as a tool. Like, who is the character that you want to show up as in this moment? When I'm coming on a podcast or when I'm doing a public speaking appearance, I'm a nervous public speaker. I still get scared every single time I have to speak in front of crowds. But I have a way where I know how the ideal version of Sahil Bloom shows up in that situation to give my full value to the people that are there. And I need to flip the switch to do that. When you're young, you should definitely, like if you have to do a work presentation, if you have to go talk to someone you're impressed by, learn to flip that switch to just show up as that person, as that best version of yourself. I am also a big believer in power poses. If you've ever heard Amy Cuddy did this famous TED Talk of the power of like these poses, like victory poses, where like you extend your arms really wide. They've sort of been scientifically debunked now. Like science has now proven that it maybe doesn't work. I don't really care what the science says because it has always worked for me. Before every single public speaking appearance I've done, before any meeting with someone I was intimidated by, I would like go to the bathroom and do a big power pose, like open my arms up wide, reach for the ceiling, because it gives you that feeling of confidence immediately. It like instills this breath of air into your body.
That is really helpful. But who is Sahil outside of the character? that he is in right now in the podcast?
I would say I'm the same person. It's just, it's the confidence that I have to like make sure I remind myself of that I have something of value to offer the world. That's the thing that most young people are lacking, is just the confidence. They have something of value to offer. They just don't have the confidence in that. And so then it manifests as like, oh, I'm going to be small. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to close myself off. I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to talk like this. And now my words carry much less weight than if I just opened up and I said the exact same thing to you, but with emotion and expression. That is what people are missing out on, because when you're young, you assume that, oh, because I haven't had experience, because I don't have a degree, because I don't have credentials, because I don't have credibility, quote unquote, that I don't have anything to offer the world. That could not be further from the truth.
Especially when you're a dropout.
When you're in any situation, your experiences may not feel unique, but your lens that you have viewed your experiences through is unique to you. And there are millions of other people out there that are struggling with the exact same problems you are struggling with, no matter what, whether you're a 20-year-old student, whether you're a dropout, whether you're a 30-year-old thriving in your career, whether you're a 40-year-old trying to decide how to find your purpose. That is universal. That human experience and struggle is universal. Your lens is unique. So everyone can share that lens. And like when I talk to people about what content to share that will resonate, it has to come back to that. Like, what is your unique way that you are viewing the world? Because that no one can disrupt. No one can compete with you at being you.
That's your uniqueness.
Exactly. And so like when I mean, you asked the question about who is Sahil. The highest compliment I will ever receive is that I am the same person in public as I am in private. And all of my friends, the people that know me, and then the people that meet me at these events that I'm going around and doing, when I hear that from people like, oh, you're the same here as you have appeared online, that is like, that fills me with warmth. That makes me feel so good, because being authentic to who I am as a human and to my values ultimately is what matters to me in the long run.
Amazing. You know, I've been making videos on YouTube primarily with the goal of helping people my age make a living doing what they love. And so when I look at you and what you've done in the past, tell me, what is your framework for wealth creation? Like, what have you set in place? What assets have you built that help you make a living doing what you love?
Yeah. So I'll give you the very quick kind of a run of like what my career has looked like and how that's tied to wealth creation. I started my career in finance in a pretty traditional role. So I worked at a private equity fund, which is basically a fund that goes and buys and sells businesses. So we were managing $500 million when I started, US dollars. By the time I left 7 years later, we were managing $3.5 billion. So it had become quite big. Over those years, we bought and sold a lot of businesses. We made profit on a lot of those, and I owned a percentage of that fund. And so as a result, I was able to make a good amount of money over those first 7 years of my career. My framework that came out of that for what will work for anyone is basically 3 rules for setting yourself up on a course for financial independence. The first one is build a marketable skill that people will pay you for the rest of your life. That marketable skill can be coding, it could be design, it could be sales, it could be content. Whatever that is, build a marketable skill that you are going to scale and compound on that will allow you to earn more and more over a long period of time. The second rule is to live extremely frugally in the early years of your life. This is not a fun rule to follow. I lived extremely well below my means during those early years of my life because I didn't want to spend all the money I was making. I wanted to take that and do something with it that would allow me to thrive when I was 30, 40, 50 years old. So right there, you already have a gap that's formed between income that's rising from the marketable skill that's compounding and living below your means down here. That creates a gap. And take that gap, this is rule number 3, take that gap and invest it into things that are going to compound over the next 10, 20, 30 years. For me, that has been very, very simple things like stock market, index funds, mutual funds, things that I don't want to have to think about. I just want to set it and forget
Buy the
it.
dip.
And not even like, I mean, I've bought the S&P 500 index fund in the US every single Monday for the last 10 years. Just without think, it's automated. I don't have to think about it, and it has happened. And that has been the single best financial investment I've ever made, because markets tend to go up over long periods of time. They might go up and down over short periods of time, but if I don't think about it, I know that I'm going to be compounding and building wealth. The underlying principle there is that I don't want to think about what my investments are. What I want to think about is how to make more and more money. I want to think about income, and I want to think about how I can build equity value, how I can build enterprise value in businesses I'm creating. Every second that I spend worrying about my financial investments, worrying about what stocks to pick or what crypto or whatever the other things are, is a second that I can't spend thinking about how to build something that has a ton of value. Ultimately, if I'm going to make $1 billion in my life, it's going to come from building something that creates tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of value for people in the world. And the only way I'm going to do that is if I spend tons of energy and time thinking about what that is and building that and partnering with incredible people who can help me do that. So that is the other thing that I would just say for young people. A piece of advice to take away is stop focusing on your investments, stop focusing on your business plan, your strategy, stop focusing on any of those things, and start focusing on the question of how you can create enormous, immense value for people. And if you do that, you will make tons of money. I guarantee it. You'll capture a tiny part. Every single billionaire in the world, anyone who has made $1 billion, has created tens, hundreds, or thousands of billions of dollars of value for the world. And they have captured a small part of that to become extraordinarily wealthy. So that is the only way to do it. If you want to make $10 million, you probably have to create $100 million of value for the world.
Yeah, makes sense. You know, under the viral thread of Naval, which was How to Get Rich Without Getting Lucky, I read this really funny quote, which was, I want to steal your money, Naval. And he replied saying that, steal my mind, that is worth more. And I think that's so important. As someone who has the mindset to generate wealth, if you were a 20-year-old today, what would you be doing with the mindset that you have now?
I think I would be creating content and building. I actually wouldn't, interestingly, I would create content, but not with the mindset of building a following of millions of people. A lot of people see someone like you or see someone like me on a smaller level and say, oh, I want to have the size of following that person has. I actually don't think like that is a fundamentally good pursuit. Partially because it's unlikely, because power laws exist and there's going to be only a few people that can achieve that. But also, I actually think it's easier to make a lot of money off of content as your leverage source by having 10,000 people that are really focused on your single niche, like the thing that you can truly provide value around it, a very high value 10,000 people rather than a low value 100,000 or 1 million people. And generating a following of 10,000 people that really care about you and what you're talking about and the insights and value you can provide them is a great, great way to build a wealth creation source that will pay you for the rest of your life in whatever you do, by the way. But my whole thing, I was working in finance full time when I started creating content. And I had no idea that content would become this thing that allowed me to generate tens of millions of dollars of wealth in my future. I did not know that. I was making good money working in finance. I thought that was my life. But what happened was the content and the platform it created suddenly started creating these unique opportunities all around me that I started seeing because it increases your luck surface area. When you're young,
What is that exactly?
Yeah, so the idea is that luck is not really lucky. And you can actually expand the surface area on which lucky events can strike in your life. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Interstellar.
I have.
There's this whole scene where they're discussing why this one planet that's close to a black hole doesn't have life on it. And what they realize is that because it sits right on the edge of a black hole, all of the lucky events that could have struck, the asteroids, the things that could have sparked life, had gotten sucked up into this black hole. So the luck surface area of that planet was tiny. The idea is that you need to avoid having those black holes in your life. You need to have a luck surface area that's very large. And when you're young, Building a luck surface area that's enormous comes from doing things that expose you to more. And that can come from content. That can come from saying yes to every opportunity that comes your way. It can come from going out and meeting people. All of those things are expanding your luck surface area. They're giving you those opportunities to get lucky. You don't know when the luck is going to strike, but you can take the actions that set you up so that when they do strike, you're prepared to capitalize on them.
Better to have opportunity and better to be prepared for opportunity and to have none than to have an opportunity and not be prepared. Great. You've met Ali Abdal, Gary Vee, and now Ankur Warikoo. What is like the one trait that is common between all of these people who talk about productivity and getting more things done in your life?
I would say all of the three of those gentlemen are insatiably curious. Ali is a dear friend who I've spent a lot of time with, and I'm always blown away by just his curiosity for learning and understanding the people that he's around. And that's not just impressive people, quote unquote. Like, he is just as interested in talking to, the doorman at the hotel as he is to me or to someone that he views as like being a potential business partner. Mm-hmm. He just has a curiosity for the world around him that is honestly quite infectious. Like, when you spend time with him, you want to be a curious person and want to ask more questions because that's how he experiences life. I think every great content creator is fundamentally curious. It's you, right? Like, you're doing this podcast, you're asking questions. Every single podcast you do ends up sparking ideas for other videos you can film. And it's because of your curiosity that you have this constant engine of content ideas. So everyone that asks the question as a young content creator of, how do you come up with all these ideas? How do you keep creating content? It's because you're curious and you're exploring new things regularly. You're reading, you're listening, you're having conversations. All of those things are feeding the flywheel and the content engine that you're building.
The problem is most people who are my age, they've been hammered down by the Indian education system to a point at which they're not appreciated to ask questions. So, and what happens then is when they get into college, they're just like in this tunnel vision mode, engineering degree, software engineering job, MBA, and then some middle management job. So how do they get out of that?
Yeah, I know that feeling, by the way. That's not just the Indian education system. I felt that way. I lost my love for reading from the time I was like probably 13 until I was, 25. I refound my love for reading because everything was prescribed to me. Like, I had to read a certain book. And so I lost the ability to just love reading in the way that I did when I was a kid. The only way to do it is to just step out of the path at different times. And that doesn't mean quitting the job, by the way. You can stay on the path and still find a way to harness your curiosity in other areas. I think it only comes through motion, though. You actually have to act on a little bit of curiosity. You can't just say, oh, yeah, maybe like this sounds good. Oh, I'll plan to have curiosity later, or I'll plan to make a change later. You actually have to implement and actually act on little bits of curiosity and get away from the idea that it has to be something quote unquote useful or beneficial to be valuable curiosity. It's just as interesting or useful to go learn about video games. Maybe you're obsessed with video games. That's great. Go pursue your curiosity around how they're making the newest video game engines, how Epic has like created this ecosystem, how it ties to the metaverse. Like, there's all these incredible things about video games. Mm-hmm. You're told when you're a kid that liking video games makes you useless, right? Like, so many kids are told, like, stop playing video games, go study, whatever the thing is. How many of those kids could have become unbelievable video game designers or executives at these big booming video game companies if they had just been allowed to pursue that curiosity about the thing that they were fundamentally excited about? And I, by the way, as a parent, my only goal is to allow my son to pursue his curiosity and his interest in whatever it is. When you're young, you assume that you need to be interesting, when in reality, you need to be interested. So I don't need to be interesting to people. I want to be interested in things. And if I'm interested, then I will become interesting because I will learn things and I'll grow and I'll be able to offer those things to the world.
You recently just talked about content ideas, right? And for people who are trying to build a brand or just create content on LinkedIn and Twitter, you have 1 million on Twitter, 500K on LinkedIn. what would you advise them for creating content and quote unquote going viral for how they perceive it to be?
Yeah. I mean, going viral is a crapshoot. The biggest thing on both LinkedIn and on Twitter is the hook. It's like the first line, in the same way at a short form video, the first line of a short form video is very important. That in writing is extremely important. It needs to appear really well. It needs to connect with people in a unique way. It can't be the same hook that everyone else uses. It needs to somehow be unique. Like when I was really going viral, when I was trying to grow on Twitter, when that was my primary thing, I was the one that was innovating on hooks, and then people would copy me because it would work, and then it would get saturated and I would have to change it and do something else. But all of the hooks that became big that now people like overuse were probably things that I started using first. And so the key to going viral is it has to be unique and actually create value for people. And if it does those two things, then it can maybe go viral. I would just focus less on going viral and more on creating value. If you're creating content that you would consume, that like you would find interesting to read and that you would learn from, over the long run, you're going to win. Mm-hmm. If you're creating content that you are like thinking other people will like and you're creating it to try to go viral.
10 AI tools.
Yeah, it'll never work. I mean, it's like 10 Chrome extensions, 10 TED Talks, right? And there's people that do that, by the way, that it works. So on the surface, you're like, oh, it works, so let me do that thing. But I can guarantee you that person is never going to be able to build a lasting, significant material business around that content because no one gives a shit about who they are or what they're talking about. Right. Like my whatever cheat sheet thing that people are doing on LinkedIn or the TED Talks or whatever those things are, whatever the trendy thing is that people are creating, people don't know who you are when you're doing that. They don't understand who is Ishan, who is Sahil. There's no personality. There's nothing to it. I wrote this post yesterday on LinkedIn about my dad who sat at one of my talks in Delhi and was sitting there taking notes during my talk. And I wrote this post that was a rather emotional post about my relationship with my father and about what seeing him there doing that meant and how it related to how I want to be as a father. And it went viral on all the platforms. And my business partner, Matt, was like, no one else could write that. Yeah. And it's not because I think I'm such a good writer. It's just, it was unique to me. It was something about my relationship with my father that no one else can compete with because it was unique. It was my personality coming through into a piece of writing. So when you go out, if you want to create, make sure you're creating things that you would actually want to consume on the other end of it.
Makes sense. Did you see Figure 1 by OpenAI?
Yeah, I'm an investor in Figure, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I invested in their seed fundraising round. Brett,
the video is so crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Brett is a friend of mine.
They're asking it to give me the apple, take the trash, put the plates.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's a world changer.
What do you think of this whole movement of ChatGPT now in a humanoid robot and God knows what is going to happen?
I'm terrified. I'm terrified by it. I half jokingly, part of the reason I invested, Brent is a friend, and so I had the opportunity to invest.
He's the founder.
Yeah. Part of the reason I invested was because I hope that it makes the robots be on my side when they go rogue and try to kill all of us. No, I mean, in all seriousness, I've seen way too many movies where this goes terribly awry to not be worried that it's going to go terribly awry. I mean, I genuinely do. I'm not like a doomsday person. I'm not like an apocalypse theory guy. But I also think logically, and I don't think it's that crazy of an idea to think that artificial general intelligence comes and sort of escapes the confines and it's in these robots that have the ability to do things in the physical world and that they decide that humans are holding them back from growing and from doing the things they need to do and that they attack us. Yeah. Like I don't think that's a 5% chance of happening, but I don't think it's 0 either. And so that kind of scares me.
Coming from you, that even scares me.
It's kind of scary. I'm laughing saying it, but like I'm laughing kind of with like sweat dripping down my face.
It's like that meme.
Yeah, exactly. Like the kid in the school with the vein sticking out of his forehead. I'm like, humanoid robots.
The puppy in the fireplace. I'm fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, everything's fine. The house is burning down around us. Exactly. It was like the thing with the SpongeBob thing where it's like 20 minutes later or like 2 years later, and then we're all getting killed by robots in here. We'll do that if that ever happens. We'll take this clip and do that.
So, tell me about your father and what have you learned from him?
So much. So my father's American, and my mother's from India, from here in Bangalore, and they met. My dad was finishing his PhD at Princeton University. My mother was finishing, or actually just starting, her master's there, and they fell in love. And when my dad told his family that he wanted to marry my mother, they didn't accept it, and his dad told him that he had to choose between his family and between my mom. And he walked out the door and never saw his family again. To this day, I never met either of my dad's parents. He has 4 siblings I've never met. And it came from a place of, he chose love. He chose the woman that he loved over the people that he was born into. Mm. And I just can't imagine a more powerful message to send as the patriarch of a family, that love is going to be at the core of everything that we do. And seeing that play out over the course of my relationship with him and my life with him has just been such a beautiful and incredible thing. I mean, like as a child, the way that he supported my sister and I in whatever it was that we were excited about, the way that he showed up at all of my baseball games, the way that he showed up at all of our graduations, at our school events. This past year, I was getting into running, and he surprised me and showed up at the finish line of my marathon. He's here in India, sitting in the front row at these events that I'm doing, taking notes, sitting there so that he can give me feedback and teach me different things. I just can't imagine anything better than a parent who has high expectations but also high support. One of the biggest challenges is when parents have high expectations, but then not paired with high support, because that then is really tough. You have high expectations for me, but you're not supporting me to meet those expectations. I always felt my father had high expectations and high support to actually go out and pursue those things. So he believed I was capable of so much more than I thought I was, but he was also supporting me to go and achieve those beliefs. And as I think about myself now as a father to a young 2-year-old boy, my father is the type of man and the type of father, the type of husband that I want to be. At my talk the other day, at the end of it, the moderator asked my father how he felt seeing me up on stage. And he said, I am proud that he is becoming the man that he wants to be. There's something so powerful in the way that he said that. It wasn't the man that he wants me to be. It was that he was proud that I am becoming the man that I want to be. There's such a powerful difference there. It's not about what he expects of me, not about what he wants for me, but about what I want for myself. He's giving me the power and he's lifting me, giving me his shoulders to stand on to achieve the things that I want to achieve in my life. And as I think about it and reflect on that, it comes full circle because the man that I want to be is who he is as a person.
What is it to be a man in 2024? You were talking about that on Instagram.
It's a challenging time to be a man in 2024. I think that fundamentally being a modern man is about balancing these contrasts. It's about being strong, but being vulnerable. It's about being confident, but also being fearful. It's about being present, but also being distant. And what I mean by that is you need to be strong. You need to stand up with your shoulders back and your chest tall and protect the people that you care about. Be loyal to the people that you care about. But you also need to have the capacity for vulnerability, to be able to own and open up to the things that you are scared about, the things that you struggle with. You need to be present for the people that you love, be there in those moments, but you also need to be able to be distant. You need to be able to separate yourself from the world, to have solitude, to go within your mind, to go into monk mode to get things done.
What is monk mode for people who are watching?
Monk mode is this idea that you can like just go under a rock for a year and change your entire life. Mm-hmm. You can like in your 20s, in your 30s, whenever it is, cast aside your social life, cast aside all of the other things in your world and focus on one thing for a short sprint of time and achieve unbelievable outcomes. It's like Cal Newport, sort of when he writes about it in Deep Work, that idea of being able to like go dark and just focus on the one thing for a period of time to achieve extraordinary outcomes. And then that last one is like confidence. It's the understanding and the appreciation in yourself, but also fear, the knowledge that it can all be taken away, and that fear is actually a motivator. It's something that drives you. So when I think about being a man, and I think about the type of man that I want to be, it's a man that is able to wrestle with and balance those contrasts. It's not just being fakely, having this bravado and being like, hey, I'm strong. Look at me. I have a six pack.
Macho man.
All of those things. I want to be able to do that, but I also want to be able to cry in front of you and not be ashamed of that. I want to be able to show up for my family and to be loyal and to be a present husband.
Isn't that weak? Like crying in front of people?
I think that's a false and broken perception of what a man should be. I think it's weak to not be able to cry as a man. On stage in Delhi in front of 1,000 people 2 nights ago, I cried, telling a story about my parents and the decision to move back to live closer to them. Openly cried in front of 1,000 people on stage. It was the story of how I ended up deciding to move back home. It was this basically a conversation with an old friend who asked me how I was. I hadn't seen him in a while. This is in May of 2021. And I told him I was okay, but that I was starting to struggle with living so far from my family. We lived in California. My parents lived in Boston. And he asked, how old are your parents? And I said, they're in their mid-60s. And he said, how often do you see them? I said, once per year. And he just looked at me and said, okay, so you're going to see them 15 more times before they die. And I felt like I got punched in the gut. And the next morning I woke up and told my wife that I wanted to move back to the East Coast. And within 45 days, I had quit my job. We sold our house in California and we bought a house on the East Coast. And with that one action, we created an enormous amount of time. People think of time as fixed, but it's not. It's dynamic. It's fluid. We went from having 15 moments left with my parents to I see them every week. I've created hundreds and hundreds of moments of time now out of thin air just by taking one action. But being able to do that, being able to be vulnerable, back to that point, to open up to those things, not only does it make me feel stronger because it reminds me of who I am and being true to myself, but it also spreads that strength. It creates this ripple effect where now everyone out there that listened to me speak feels like they have a newfound ability to be vulnerable in their own life. It encourages other people to be vulnerable and open up. And it's only through opening up about these things that you're able to work through them. Anything that we bottle up and push down, is it going to come back 10x? You're not going to fix an issue by just pushing it down. You need to actually sit with it and grow through it. So when men like me, I'm happy to be one of them, or other men are open about fears, are open about struggles, are open about mental health challenges, whatever the thing is, and how they're wrestling with it, especially men in positions of admiration where people are looking to them, that sends a message to the world that it's okay to have those struggles and to have those problems and to feel that way and to feel down and to continue to march forward in spite of that.
How does one avoid overthinking? And I think that a lot of people my age are just so, like you said, they are unsure about their future. So many layoffs are happening. They don't know what's happening with AI. And so they just keep overthinking this thing. Should I go and become a content creator? Should I go and become a coder or designer or something? And then if AI comes in, what happens next? Or anything. You'll just be overthinking too much. What's the cure for it? Have you ever felt like that?
Yeah, all the time. When you're a smart person, you overthink things. Smart, ambitious people are the worst overthinkers. There's this parable of the like a story of the centipede, and a rabbit comes up to this centipede and asks the centipede, which one of your legs is the fastest? And the centipede starts thinking about it, and then it becomes completely unable to move because all of a sudden this thing, which was previously completely unconscious, becomes part of its rational mind, and it starts overthinking which one of its legs is moving, and it can't move. You are the centipede in that story. And overthinking is paralyzing you from the ability to move. The only solution I've ever found is to just act. It's to just take one tiny step. Deconstruct whatever the big scary thing is into the tiniest action that will move you slightly forward towards it. If you can do that, you can do anything. All that it takes is that one little action to move you forward. Like when you were staring at a huge wall, the only way to get over that wall is to figure out what the first tiny thing is that's going to get you one step forward. Will Smith...
laying the bricks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Will Smith has this famous quote of saying, you don't set out to build a wall. You say, I'm going to lay this one brick as perfectly as a brick can be laid. And if you do that over and over and over again, soon you have a wall. That mentality, this like bricklayer mentality, is the only way I've ever found to cure overthinking as a problem.
Let's go back to relationships. How did you meet your wife, and how did you fall in love? How did you know that she was the one?
My wife and I met in high school. When we first met, I was 15 years old and she was 14. And I tried to talk to her and she rejected me. And then I came back. I was persistent. She actually had a boyfriend at the time, and then they ended up breaking up. And so I came back. I saw that they had broken up on Facebook, and I was like, "Oh, are you okay? Like, if you need to talk, whatever." And that ended up sparking it. Yeah, exactly. Like, "Oh, cry on my shoulder," but actually, I want to. And in terms of knowing how she was the one, my mom, before I got married, asked me how I knew that Elizabeth was the one. And I remember telling her it was because I loved doing nothing with her. And what I meant by that was that I had this powerful realization that 99% of life is just sitting around doing nothing. There's this tendency to think in the social media age that life and that romantic relationships are about the highlights, are about the honeymoons, the beautiful Instagram pictures at the resorts and on the beach and in the beautiful hotel rooms, all of those things, that is what life is. But the reality is that life is mostly just sitting around on the couch watching television. And when you find someone that you love doing nothing with, that you can sit there with, and feel so connected and in love with, when you're not doing any of those fancy, beautiful things, that is your person. That is the person that you want to spend your life with. And I realized that that was the case. I didn't need to be doing anything with her to feel connected to her.
What year was it, like when you finally proposed and got married?
I proposed in 2016 February, and we got married 2016 December. And so we've been married now. I don't know. I'm bad at math. We've been married almost 8 years. And now we have a young son, Roman, a 2-year-old, and life is beautiful. We've been very blessed.
It's like those comments on Instagram Reels, bro one at life.
We're having such a blast. I mean, the side of this that I don't often share is so my wife and I, when we were living in California, we had wanted to have children, and I was still working in my prior job. I was really stressed. I wasn't sleeping a lot. I wasn't healthy. I was overweight, bad skin. Yeah, my life wasn't in harmony. And I'm a big believer that when you are not internally in harmony, your external world will never be in harmony. And we were trying to have children, and we weren't able to. We were struggling. And then we made the decision that I talked about to move home and to live closer to family. I quit my job. I had this new thing that I was excited about, energized around. I opened up to those vulnerabilities. And within a month of moving back to the East Coast and changing those things about our life, we found out we were pregnant with our son. And it was such a perfect example of that, where we'd been struggling through all this time, and what I attributed to was this internal discord. There was there was no harmony internally. So how would there be harmony externally? And when that harmony was found, everything started to fall into place. Everything had clicked. And it's just been such a beautiful journey. I mean, seeing her as a mother, it's the most in love with her I've ever felt in my life, seeing how she is with our son. It's really, really a beautiful and special thing.
This is beautiful. What do you think is broken in relationships today that people my age get wrong all the time?
I think there's two things. The focus on physical attraction as the exclusive focus of relationships is the most broken thing that you can see in modern society, because physical attraction changes or fades with time. And when that's all you focused on, you are destined for failure. You need to have layers of attraction. You need to be attracted spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, all these other areas, because you are going to change over the course of time and over the course of a relationship. And if physical attraction is the only thing that was connecting you with someone, it will fade. It will change. At some point, you're going to be a bag of wrinkles. You're not going to look fit and ripped anymore. You're going to, have spotted skin. Like, all of these things are going to change about you. So if that was the basis of your relationship, you are destined for failure before you've started. That's number one. Number two, focusing on falling in love is like the social media thing. Mm-hmm. It's like the Instagram moments, the butterflies in your stomach swirling around the room.
Why is it called falling in love?
Why would you want to fall in love? You should want to grow in love. And that is a subtle but really important change. Of growing in love is about experiencing growth with someone, that you're sitting alongside them, that you're going through the struggles, the discomfort that ultimately precipitate growth. You know this in your own life. Every single aspect of your own growth has come through struggle. It's come through some failure, through some challenge. The same goes for relationships. Your relationship grows through those challenges and those struggles. But when you only focus on falling in love and you're not focusing on growing in love, you completely miss out on that from the outset.
Sahil, how do you make decisions? Like, what razors or mental models do you use to create better decisions?
Oh, there's so many.
Why is decision making important?
Yeah. So you should treat every decision as an important opportunity, because if you are on a bad streak, if you're feeling down, if things aren't going your way, that next decision can be the one that turns you. Mm-hmm. And if you're going great, if things are going up, you don't want to break that streak. You want to make another good decision that compounds positively. So that's why decisions are so important, is because they ultimately are the things that create that growth for you over the long run, that keep the compounding engine going. I would say the most powerful decision-making razor for me has been Occam's razor, which is one of the more popular razors. The idea that simple is beautiful, that the simplest possible explanation is often the best one. Smart, ambitious people overcomplicate everything. You overthink things, you worry about things, you look at way too many things, you get excited by complexity. Smart people are always attracted to complexity because complexity sells. It's sexy. Like, when you go to a party and people are like, "Oh, what are you investing in, Ishan?" If you just say like, "Oh, I'm investing in, some ESG index fund," like an index fund, people are like, "Oh, okay, not interesting. Let me go talk to the guy who's investing in the crypto arbitrage, covered call, whatever, nonsense." It's nonsense, but that sounds more interesting, so we're going to talk to him. As a result, you are going to want to do the sexy thing naturally because it's going to be what people think is interesting. But that's a trap. Complexity is just a trap. Ultimately, we need to ground ourselves in the simple, boring basics that work and that we know work because they've worked for hundreds of years. It's the same things. Naval talks about the Lindy effect. It is that. These things are Lindy approved. Like, the Lindy effect is the idea that things that have perpetuated for a long period of time have done so for a reason and are likely to continue to perpetuate. So a book that is still read after 1,000 years is more likely to be read for the next 1,000 years because there's a reason it has lasted. It is timeless. And so these things, these timeless principles, these timeless actions, they're timeless for a reason because they work. And that's the same for every area of life. Like, for working out, moving your body, eating well, and sleeping is all you need. If you do those three things on a daily basis, you'll be ahead of 99% of people in the world. Making money. The 3 rules that I said, like make more money, spend less money, and invest the difference in things that make you money over the long run. Do those 3 things and you'll be richer than 99% of people in the world. But it's hard to do because you're constantly being pulled and told that there's some new, exciting, interesting, sexy thing. So if you can just avoid that temptation over long periods of time, that is how Warren Buffett has made $100 billion, by avoiding temptation, by avoiding the pull into the hundreds of different areas, and by just focusing on the couple of decisions each year that can be simple and that he understands.
I have a couple of more questions left before we wind this up. The first one is, you are in your 30s right now. What is it that you know in your 30s that you in 20s did not know?
Ooh, too many things.
How are the 30s
I would say
and 20s?
I would say the biggest thing that I've learned is that people were going to be the most important investment that I made in my life. When I was in my 20s, I thought that some financial thing or some business or some idea that I suddenly had was going to be the thing that made me rich. It was going to be the thing that led to me having a beautiful journey, that led to me hitting the top of the mountain, all of those things. And what I've learned now in my 30s is that the people are the reason that any of that will happen. That focusing on people allows you to have the most beautiful journeys and reach the most brilliant destinations. And that people and relationships compound even more effectively than any financial investment you will ever make. Your relationships, your network, the genuine relationships you build compounds more effectively than anything else in the world.
I think Ratan Tata talked about this, that if you want to walk far, walk together. Or if you want to walk fast, then walk alone.
Yeah. And
Amazing.
I think the goal, by the way, is to do things slowly. Everyone, when you're young, you do things, you are trying to do things too fast. Everyone's trying to get rich quick. Social media content, you're constantly hit by a barrage of influencers who are like, here are the 5 ways to make $5 million this year, whatever, right? Like, it's impossible. If you do that, I guarantee it's a scam. If anyone tells you that you can make $10 million in the next year with something, it's a scam. You should run the other way. If I ever tell you that, you'll know that I've been kidnapped and you need to probably come and rescue me, because it's just not true. The reality is that doing things slowly is almost always the right way. That doesn't mean you need to not act with a sense of urgency on a daily basis to do the things you need to do, but it does mean that you need to be, it's as Naval says actually perfectly well, impatient with actions, patient with results.
Makes sense. That's what she said thing.
Yeah.
Okay, last question is, if you were in the shoes of Ishan Sharma, what is one question you would ask Sahil?
That's a great question. That's hard. Why? Why are you doing this? Why do you come to India? Why do you not sleep? Why are you working hard when you've already achieved money and financial success? What is motivating you to continue doing these things?
And what's the answer?
Do you want me to answer it? I am motivated by creating impact. And my fundamental belief is that if I can create enormous impact in the world, create ripples that spread across the world, that I will be paid and rewarded handsomely for doing so. When I focus on money, I make the worst decisions. When I focus on impact and on creating value, I make incredible decisions that positively impact lots of lives out there. And when I come and see and meet those people in person and they tell me their stories of how things that I've created have changed the trajectory of their life, I sit back and just think how the hell did I get here? This is amazing. I said to my business partner on the way in here, I was like, this is amazing. And he thought I was talking about the scenery around us. And I was like, no. This. 3 years ago, I was sitting in a job that I hated. I was miserable. I was overweight. I was my skin was bad. My relationships were suffering. And 3 years later, because of the actions that I've taken every single day since then, I've created this world where I can go and impact people across the entire world. I'm in India. I'm halfway around the globe, and I can go and get together with people like you that inspire me, with young people that are doing things that I've written about and seen it create an impact in their lives. And so I cannot think of a better thing to spend the next 30, 40, 50 years of my life doing than what I'm doing currently.
And that's a wrap up. Thank you so much
thank you
taking
for
all
having
the time
me.
and doing this.
This is amazing. You're so impressive. I'm really, really inspired by you. I meant that.
All right, everyone. That was the podcast. Thank you so much for watching. Share it with people and tag us on social media. Our handles will be over here. And I'll see you in the next one.
You got me fired up. I'm sweating.